Friends, we're standing before the great holiday of Passover, Pesach. And for all those that are going to sit in the Seder night, first of all, greetings to you. Happy and kosher Passover. And today we want to leave you with a small message regarding the Haggadah that you're going to read on Friday night. And I'm going to show you the part of the Haggadah that I want to focus on today. We're talking about this text. See if you recognize. This text by Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Akiva is a text that we all read on the night of Passover. It is a complex text and a text that makes us wonder, what is that text exactly? In short, there is a triple dispute between the sages of the 2nd century in Israel and between Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Akiva, and they're disputing how many afflictions did God give the Egyptians on the Sea of Reeds, Yam Suf. The dispute is very simple. We know that there are 10 plagues. So we know that the plagues are called the finger of God. That's what the magicians of Pharaoh said. Oh, this is the finger of God that we see. But in the Sea of Reeds, it says we saw the strong and outstretched hand of God. Hand has 5 fingers. So Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean says, if a finger is 10 plagues and a hand has 5 fingers, so obviously in the Sea of Reeds, they were inflicted by 50 plagues or 50 afflictions. How can you top that? Well, Rabbi Eliezer says, we know that every affliction in Egypt consisted of 4 parts. Hence, there were actually 40 afflictions in Egypt. So if you times that, which is a finger of 40, times 5 fingers of the hand, outstretched hand of God, in the Sea of Reeds, 5 times 40 is 200. This is the text that we read in the Haggadah. And then the third party of this dispute is the famous Rabbi Akiva, who says no, every affliction in Egypt consisted of 5 parts, and he enumerates them. So therefore 5 parts times 10 is 50. But in the Sea of Reeds we had a hand. So if in Egypt they saw only a finger of God, which is 50, and in the Sea of Reeds they saw the hand of God, 5 times 50 is 250. This is the text that we read in Leil Seder, right before we eat the matzah. And it's very perplexed. Everybody's wondering, what are we doing math here? 5 times 50, 5 times 10. Why is this relevant to the Haggadah? Ask anyone that reads it, they're puzzled. They just, go over it very quickly. Let's get to the food. All the other places in Haggadah, you can talk about the redemption, you can talk about different ideas, stories, but this is a very perplexing type of text. I tried to decipher that text for many years, and honestly, I still don't have a good answer for it. But let's try a little bit, and maybe we can give some kind of an insight towards this text that we read in the Haggadah. There are a few reasons why we read this according to the major commentators. One, because God promises that all the afflictions that I brought on the Egyptians, I will not bring on you, the Israelites who are going into the land of Israel. This is a verse in the scripture, in the Torah. So therefore the sages are trying to enumerate and to multiply the afflictions in order for it not to settle on the Israelites. The more you heighten the afflictions on the Egyptians, those afflictions will not come on the Israelites. So there's a difference between 5 or 250. Let's make it 250, because these are the afflictions that God will not exercise on the Israelites in the land of Israel. That's one reason. The other reason is to differentiate between the Egyptians and the Israelites. They're the ones that made us slaves for 210 years, and therefore they should be afflicted, and we should be separated from those afflictions. Not that we'll be, have a medicine for it and have a cure for it, but that's for them, and we are free from those afflictions. It's along the lines that we said before, a little bit with a different twist. There's another reason to show the hand of God, because the more you enumerate the afflictions, the higher and mightier God becomes. Only 10 plagues? No, 250. God is mightier and has more power. So the more you heighten the afflictions, the more God gets power. Those are the conventional explanations that we hear in the sages. I saw a beautiful commentary by Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, the Sridei Esh, Holocaust survivor who wrote fabulous books, one of the great not only authors but commentators and Torah scholars in this generation in the 20th century. And here he is focusing not on the numbers, as he says, is this a math class, timing things by 5? No, it's not about the math, it's about the text. And here he makes a differentiation, because the finger of God, who saw that? The Egyptians, as it says. The magicians of Pharaoh, hence the Egyptians, says this is the finger of God. And that's how they see it. But the Israelites and the Israelites saw the hand of God. It's a difference between how Egyptians see things and how Israelites see things. In the times of Egypt, where everybody was idol worshipping, they saw fingers. Every detail that happened, every affliction that came, they attributed it to a different God. If there was blood or hail or frogs or lice or vermin, it doesn't matter what plague came on the Egyptians, they attributed it to a different God. Oh, the God of blood just inflicted us. Or the God of frogs just afflicted us. Maybe our God, Ra or Pharaoh or the Nile, will overcome the gods that Moses and Aaron are bringing on us. They saw it in terms of fingers, not unified, not coming from the same source, but separated, each one finger. The Israelites have a totally different outlook. They see all these fingers connected to one hand, to one unity. When they see these afflictions in the sea of reeds, when the sea opens and they see the hand of God, all of a sudden they see that all the afflictions that they thought were separate gods, even the Israelites, now they see it in unison. They see it as one, as a whole, as something that is unified. Why is that so important? It's a beautiful concept that Rabbi Weinberg brings us. But why is it so important to our day and age? And why are they multiplying these afflictions? We must look at these sages, Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Akiva. We know that Rabbi Eliezer is the great Rabbi Eliezer. He is the one that was the rabbi of Rabbi Akiva and also Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean. And Rabbi Eliezer is supposed to be the first one in terms of his importance, but he is in the middle because of numerating 200 and 250. Rabbi Yosi the Gallilean gives us if we go by Rabbi Weinberg, the outlook, the simple outlook: 10 plagues, 10 forces, 10 fingers, and in the time of the Sea of Reeds, they saw the hand of God, and they saw 50 afflictions, which they attributed, even those 50 afflictions, to one unity, to one power of God, and not to different gods. Rabbi Eliezer Gadol never said anything that he did not heard through the tradition, through the pipeline, all the way to Moses, to Mount Sinai. And we're talking about 1,300 years later. Only what he heard from his rabbis, all the way stemming down from Moses to the prophets, to the sages, to the great assembly, to Rabbi Eliezer in the 2nd century, whatever he heard, he passed on. So for him, the more afflictions you can attribute to God, the more you see diversity in the unity of God, the more you understand God. But it's in the framework of what he got from Moses, what he got from Mount Sinai. Understanding this great voice of God, which is dispersed into different sparks. So different afflictions can be attributed to one God, hence the number 200. But Rabbi Akiva goes solo here. We know that Rabbi Akiva is the greatest sage of the oral Torah. Yes, he got his tradition from Rabbi Eliezer and from Moses, but he looks at every little minute detail in the Torah, and he brings and breathes new life into the written Torah via the oral scripture. And for Rabbi Akiva, he looks at the reality different. Everything in reality, good or bad, is attributed to God. He can look at the worst things and the worst phenomenons in this world and all the afflictions and attribute them to one hand, to one unity. Where do we see that? In the end of the tractate, in the Talmudic passage of the tractate of Makot, when him and the sages are walking on the ruins of the second temple and they see a fox waltzing out of the Holy of Holies. What was the Holy of Holies? Rabbi Akiva is laughing. All the sages are crying. And they said to him, why are you crying? The temple is destroyed. Why are you laughing? He says, because the temple is destroyed. They can't understand what he's saying. He says, of course, when the temple is destroyed, the prophets are already telling us that the destruction is the beginning of salvation. So I know that it's going to be rebuilt. I know that we're going to go on a long journey of exile, but in the end, the third temple is going to be built. So I'm laughing because I see the beginning of the resurrection. Only a person that can see afflictions, and many of them, and look ahead to 2,000 years of exile and laugh, because he knows that it's not single fingers. He knows that the more he enumerates the afflictions and brings them together under one package, under one roof, under God, you can understand it much better. So that's why right before we eat the matzah, we read this passage by these three sages, each one seeing the great hand of God, and each one taking the afflictions and trying to bring them together. And the top, the height of it all, is Rabbi Akiva, who sees as many afflictions as he sees, but under one unity, under God, towards the redemption. How important is that message today, when we have a world that is toppling over in many areas? Many countries are being afflicted. Many countries are being turned over. And we're worried. But the more afflictions we can attribute to a master plan, the more we can see the redemption of the world and of Israel. Happy Passover to all. And let's remember this strong message of redemption. Chag Sameach.